It's my pleasure to introduce Julie Haupt to you. Julie received her bachelor's degree in early childhood education with an elementary education certificate from BYU. She graduated as the department's valedictorian. She then received her master's degree in family sciences with early childhood education specialization from BYU. Julie has developed courses for and or taught for numerous departments across campus, including teacher education, psychology, the Marriott School of Management, independent study, and currently teaches SFL 210 for the School of Family Life. She has received numerous awards on campus, including the Brigham Award, the Adjunct Faculty Award from the BYU Faculty Women's Association, and the university's Adjunct Faculty Excellence Award. Julie also has numerous publications to her credit, including co-authoring chapters in all three of our school's so-called proclamation volumes. And it's our privilege to have her here today, and Essie, join me in welcoming her.
Thank you. It's a thrill for me to be able to make this presentation. I am both humbled and excited about this opportunity because as I look around the room, having spent a long time in the School of Family Life as an adjunct, there are so many faces in this room that, I kind of tear up, right, to say thank you for all you've done. Well, I appreciate those of you who have nurtured my path to this point. Many of you I know simply by reputation and by research that you've done and et cetera, and so all of you are part of the admired family, I think, from my perspective. And I felt like I wanted to say something at the beginning here. Many of you have nurtured my path, but many of you have also encouraged me to go on for a PhD. And all along this whole entire path, I have thought carefully about that. I have not necessarily always been constrained by finances or desire or family support or any of those things, but every time I fell to my knees, I heard that there was a different path for me. And so I was willing to walk that path and have done so for 30 years. And now at this point in time, there is this magnificent confluence of skills gained in lots of different arenas and a job to be done here in the School of Family Life and good timing for me as an individual. And so I hope today that my presentation can help you see how I've been prepared for this kind of a position and hopefully uniquely prepared to contribute in an important way to the School of Family Life, a place that I have so dearly loved and have tried to contribute to for these many years. And so I thought, I know most of you have I think many of you have looked at the CV, but I thought the quickest way to give you kind of a brief look at my background, although Larry did a marvelous job at the beginning, so some of this is a little bit repetitious, is kind of just do kind of a by the numbers sort of thing. So by the numbers, I've spent 30 years here pretty continuously with a contract at BYU, serving in one place or another almost entirely here in the School of Family Life, but also other places because I've served in, as he mentioned, for different departments, the business school for about the last 7 years and psychology for about the last 4 years, and education in the early part of my career here at BYU. Across that period of time, I've taught 12 different courses, which has been, a marvelous opportunity to innovate and to learn from others about this whole variety of different kind of content areas. I figure, trying to add up the numbers, that I've taught about 5,000 students while I've been here, and that's been the great blessing of my life, is to interact with the remarkable students that we have come here to BYU. I have then taught 100 sections of one thing or another. I have been keenly involved in developing about 5 different courses, either as an online course or as an independent study course, or to develop, like over in the Marriott School, we just completed an open source online slide doc textbook kind of thing, and I helped out with activities related to that and grammar sections related to that and so forth. I did have the marvelous opportunity with the second proclamation book, as we call it, to work with Dave Dahlheit and others as the managing editor. And that's part of the way that I got to know many of you, too, was through your authorship in that publication. And that, for me, was a marvelous opportunity to network and to learn broadly about many areas of family life, and such an incredible blessing for me to be in that spot. As he mentioned, I've done some publishing. This is not impressive, I realize, in this group, 12 publications and 9 conference presentations and etc. But the fact that I was under no university obligation to do so, and that it was pretty much always my own time, my own dime, it at least indicates that I have a lot of interest and some experience in this area, which has been a valuable and wonderful part. I have loved working with co-authors and authoring chapters and etc. 36 is the number of these 100 sections that have actually been the GE advanced writing course, either in psychology or in business. So I have worked a lot with the general education requirements, know what it takes to turn students from kind of, I mostly know how to write, to really good writers, because essentially I see an advanced GE requirement as kind of the last outpost on the trail. Who's going to really want to train them in graduate school in writing? How many of them are really going to take another class in writing after their required GE advanced writing course? And so I feel like a deep and intense love of what can be done here to transform them from student writers into more professional scholarly writers, and have felt always that was the mantra for that class and the vision for a class of that sort. And of course that would transfer over to an SFL 315, again, a crucial time for each of them. 300 has to do with the number of students I've nurtured through a 10-page literature review, meeting with them individually, going through drafts, helping them step by step to be able to do something like that. So I do have some experience in knowing what works with that crowd and how you get them actually to be able to do that. I found that there is a significant difference between a 7-page paper even and a 10-page. For example, 6 to 7 requires some things, but you really have to stretch and push in order to get the longer paper. That's what we're talking about doing in this class. And so I have some perspective related to that, some of which I'll share as we go along. Larry mentioned I have 3 university awards. The one is the high-level university award, so I guess that's about as far as I could go as an adjunct, but that was a special occasion and a wonderful opportunity there. The other was the Brigham Award, which relates to my service outside of the university, which had to do with a nonprofit that I run that connects the youth of the U.S. and China through performance opportunities, and that has been an amazing experience to take youth groups 12 times, either from here to there to here, put them in each other's homes, teach them musical dance theater a lot of times, or at least overview the logistics of how that all got done. And so 550 youth, either the Chinese call me their American mom or the Americans call me their China mom. And that has been a powerful experience for me to work with youth in that way, and I've been grateful for that opportunity. But this is the thing I think I most offer out of all of these numbers, one shining, burning testimony. Of the one perfect man, and of his work with 15 prophets to draft one page of a proclamation that would and continues to change our understanding and potentially the world. And I'm grateful for that. It anchors me and it has directed me in my path. And so, numbers aside, those can be cool, but it's about where your focus is, and that's what I feel like I represent and stand for. Okay, so just quickly, what do I bring from the GE Advanced Writing course from the business school? As I stopped to identify the things that have really made a difference to me over there, that I came in knowing a little about, but have come out knowing a lot about, and have had practice in all of these areas, teaching students these skills as well. I would point to grammar and style. We have done typically a 3-week course in grammar at the Marriott School, and then put them through a very rigorous grammar test. So it's an essential fundamental over there, and learning how to teach that and work with that has been valuable. Oral presentation is something that specialized in structure and organization, visual design, business communications, things that our students will really do most days of their professional lives, which is write great emails and participate in creating reports and all of that kind of thing. They've taught me how to teach that and what's acceptable. Persuasive strategies is something we work with there. Employment and branding, and also team management. How do you put together teams of students and train them to work well and efficiently together? So this has been a powerful curriculum for me in the business school. What about psychology? What do I bring from there? Yeah, I know, I love that photo too. I bring not just library research skills, but really a close connection with librarians. We worked closely with both our business librarian, and I've worked closely with the psychology librarian in helping our students develop kind of more of a streamlined way to get into the research, and would look to do that with our SFL librarian as well. Because I turned the Psychology 307, which we're going to call the sister course, I guess, to our new 315. It's their advanced writing. It is based primarily on a literature review, so it's quite similar in some ways. I've turned that into an online course, and that online course is currently being piloted this semester. So I'm halfway through seeing how all of that will work. So far, so good. The assignments that I'm getting in are at the same level as the assignments in the face-to-face class. So far so good in doing a literature review, on your own. We did meet for 2 times to have them do group presentations, and I will meet 2 times with them individually to do individual writing conferences with them, and we'll meet again at the end of the semester to have them do their formal presentations. But other than that, everything else has been done online. We developed 35 instructional videos that went from like 3 minutes to 20 minutes kind of thing on a variety of different things. They weren't all me. I think I was in about 20% of them, but I called on the resources of faculty members, TAs, former students, all kinds of my psychology faculty members from the department and et cetera, to create those videos, which I think is valuable and is also helping them have a good experience. Talked a lot and learned a lot about synthesizing, about what the value of individualized writing conferences does. I've learned a lot about writing skill scaffolding, finding that they do much better if you know how to have them do assignments in a sequence that give them all of the background and necessary skills before you actually have them begin to write. And that's been powerful to kind of, over the last 4 years or so, work out a sequence that really works well for that. Diagnostic grading comments, figuring out how to be faster, quicker, accurate, and so forth, and being able to quickly figure out what writing problems are there, and also notate them quickly for students to help me move through that a little faster. Online instructional techniques, and of course critical thinking, which I feel like that's the heart of the whole course. You hardly ever really have to give a lecture on that. You just have to help them do a lot of it. And that, I think, is crucial also in this particular area. All right, so I have a couple of thoughts then that I wanted to share, because the second part of my presentation was to be about what do I think about the concept document and the course outline so far as it's been put together. First of all, I would say kudos to those who put that together. It's a really excellent guiding document, and I wholeheartedly stand behind what you've had to say. Had a couple of comments about a little bit about scope, delivery, and contribution that I'd like to talk about here, just as to throw it out as some things that I think if I were to get this position, some things I would be considering and bringing to the table to talk about. First of all, in the Psych 307 literature review, I mentioned that we scaffold those skills all the way down. This is essentially the sequence that has worked well for us to get these students through a 10-page literature review. We require 14 references. I'm a big stickler on you read all your research, cherry pick this research, and this is why, and this is how you synthesize, and this is how you pull out notes, and this is how you do it, and etc. We honestly have a student or two who doesn't quite make it through to the end, because if you get off track somewhere in the middle, it's such a big project, they sometimes get overwhelmed, and that's that. They come back and take it the next semester, etc. We've worked out how to do this in one semester, and it works really quite well, and I'm really very pleased with the quality of assignments we get. The literature reviews that we get are, for the most part, well synthesized and well written, and I'm proud of what they've been able to accomplish. Of course, the scope for 315 is to do a literature review as well as these three other writings, which I'm going to refer to, I guess, in this presentation as writings for diverse audiences. So one of the difficulties I think we will face immediately is, are we going to cut short quality at all in the kind of literature review that they can really put out if we're having to fast track it a little faster, and can we help them get up to speed in those three soon enough and fast enough that we will be able to help them come out with a quality kind of product. Because my vision is we don't want them to just come away saying, check, student writing was pretty decent, got, an A- on it, I'm okay. I would love to have it be more like, no, we're trying to send you out to publication channels. If we can get at least the cream of the crop of students in that class who are able to have something ready that is legitimately publication worthy or close thereto that we can help them with, I think that would get this message of the School of Family Life out to a broader community, and would love to do that. So my recommendations at this point are possibly shorten the lit review just slightly. I think once you get past 7 pages, the 8 pages would probably still take them into the critical thinking element that we want to do. Maybe a few less references possibly could do that, and try to fast track it into an 8-week segment. I do teach Psych 307, or have done, in spring and summer, so we've been able to accomplish it in that period of time, but obviously they're expecting double work during that period of time, and producing at that level as well. And then maybe another suggestion might be to teach students the conventions for all of these diverse audience assignments, but maybe have them select 2 that they do in a 4-week segment that they draft and revise. I don't know, maybe we could go for the moon and we could get them to be able to do everything. But it does seem that we're going to have to figure out to what level of quality we want based upon that outline. I think each of these areas are valuable, and each of them actually, of these diverse audience pieces, teaches them a variety of different skills, and is oftentimes based on on its own sort of set of trusted sources, some of which are scholarly research. So I do see the connection between trying to have them do whatever they did their literature research review on, and do that with regards to these, but only to a certain degree will that actually work, I think, and it depends on their topics. We would have to really kind of carefully confine their topics to certain areas in order to make sure that that would actually work, unless you were just trying to give them practice in the area. But I would love to have them do the real deal kind of thing. So here's my own little chart about how I feel like these diverse elements are different from each other. The twist Of course, with the op-ed is you're trying to promote change, and so oftentimes you want it to be something about social policy or some right that needs to be wrong that needs to be righted, etc. Blog, social media, oftentimes practical insights, and an LDS article has more of an emphasis on conveying doctrine. The channels are different sometimes, not all the time. They cross over sometimes, but primarily can be seen that way. The audience is a little bit different. A general audience in one, a specific audience in another, and even a more specific audience in the final one. The attitude of your audience can be a little bit different too. And so that's where I think you have to write to a different frame of mind, and there are different skills that are required in persuading different kinds of audiences with different kinds of attitudes. The literary device that you're using here for op-ed is a lot of persuasion and reason. Oftentimes in a blog it's narrative. Experience. In an LDS article it might be considered more instructional, so we're teaching them to write in a lot of different kinds of modes, which is an excellent idea. Trusted sources. Oftentimes you see statistics, logical analysis, and a lot of sound bites kind of thing in op-eds with stories, visuals, rich insights in concise form versus scriptures, quotes, examples, metaphors, and etc. And so it is a large task to teach them to be really great in all of these areas, and I do think that we need to teach it. And I think we need to help them understand the differences between those areas and what it is that it takes to do a really great job in those various areas. So those are my thoughts about scope. Still leaves a lot of open-ended questions and some things to sort out and some things to weigh, but at least those are some of my initial thoughts. Okay, next I'd like to turn a little bit to the idea of delivery. Then how would we actually deliver those pieces? And I would like to suggest as well that we might add 2 short sections into that course, and maybe this was considered as kind of an underlying, objective anyway, but I would say that a grammar APA technical piece would be a very valuable kind of add into this course, and also kind of maybe this shows my business school background, but a little bit about professional documents, statements of intent, graduate school letters, those kinds of communications that will help get our students into better institutions of learning, that will help prepare them for those interviews and so forth. I think it would be a valuable piece, and I think we can do it in a short time. But I would recommend that we try to do that. So I would say we break down the course into 8 weeks for the literature review, 4 weeks for the diverse audience assignments, and then 2 weeks for each of these other segments that I would recommend that we do. Also, because not all of their literature reviews will turn well into all of these diverse audience pieces, here's the thought that I've had about what to do about that. Many of those pieces are short. Many times if you have just one really powerful study that you put together with doctrine or you put together with statistics or whatever, you can have a really powerful piece that way if you have just a few clustered studies. But this group here is producing amazing research. Incredible articles that are coming out of here and great work that is coming out of here. I would love to have us have, at least as an option, the opportunity to have somebody, one of you that's just published something. We do a 35-minute interview with you. The students watch the interview. They read your research. They read maybe 2 other articles that are closely related to that research, and then they start to add in those other pieces, whether it's statistics or doctrine or et cetera, and that they use recent things that are coming out of the School of Family Life potentially as the basis for that. And so an alternate subject then for these diverse audience pieces would be recently published research they would study a videotape, a scholarly article, and 2 other related ones, and then add to it, and maybe then they do their diverse pieces related to that particular element. So just a thought, and maybe that can be an option, but I put it out on the table as a viable way to get more more students involved with what's happening with the faculty. Okay, so my other idea too is that if you've got these placed into modules, there's no reason why you necessarily have to teach them in any particular order. I do think that the grammar and the APA has to come first, close to the front of the semester, but if you were to order 4 different sections, let's say, and do the modules in a variety of different orders, there's a couple of advantages to that. First of all, it spreads the use of TAs and auxiliary assistants, like sending our students over to the library. The librarian would not get it just in one chunk and then be done for the semester. It would spread across. The same thing with the FHSS writing lab. I think we could use better that way. So our auxiliary people would be probably happier with us. I also feel like it reduces teaching and grading fatigue for instructors and TAs, because really, if you're coming across this week, you're doing 2 blues, one yellow, 1 red, and you're getting the opportunity to sort of mix it up, and the TAs are getting a chance to go through different kinds of manuscripts at the same time, and I think that would work well. It also facilitates instructor conferencing, where with this one section, 25 students, I can meet with them twice during the semester. Now that you talk about 100 students, and especially if they're on the same track, that's an overwhelming load to meet with that many in a timely fashion right at that critical point, but much more manageable if they are at different places along the track. And then potentially too, because you can do some of the instruction here, not all of it would have to be done in class. I'm seeing that a lot of the grammar could be done through videos and tutorials and workshops by trained TAs, etc. You could have sometimes that they're doing team meetings, other times that they're doing directed activities, etc. Then I would anticipate, and maybe this is my online part of me speaking, there are some delivery methods that work really well away from the classroom. Like, let's say, for example, that Allie Isom from the church's branding department is willing to do a video for us. She's not going to come down and do a special speaking assignment every section, every semester, but she would probably do a filmed kind of thing that we could then say, for your class period today, you watch this, you read this, and then you give me a reflection on how what she talked about you can see in these pieces, etc. So as a result of that, I could also see that really you could work it out so that you would have really 5 tracks with the equivalent of 4 tracks of in-class teaching, allowing another section to be onboarded that way. And if you're already working with some online elements, no reason why you couldn't think about doing an online course that would then give you a 6th track, and then suddenly we're starting to teach closer to the load that we really need to in order to move all of our students through. 315 is English 315 is a good course, but I don't think it's quite as well suited for what we're hoping that our graduates come out of the school with. So my final area, contribution. As I've mentioned before, I feel like our objective really ought to be to assist students to prepare publication-worthy reviews and other pieces. We ought to be focused on that. Whether they all get to that level or not, that ought to be something we focus on. Say, we care about this, and we're going to develop outlets for you, and that's why under the recommendations, I think it would be a worthy idea to develop a student journal like Intuition for Psychology, where they have a student editorial board. All of these reviews that our students do, if they want to take that on and they feel like they've written to that point, then they can send them in. They get a publication, they get to work with an editorial staff and do a couple of revisions the next semester to get that in, etc. I think that would be worthy to think about. And then perhaps we create something like a writings fellow kind of class for a student editorial board, and those who would be like not just TAs, but I would see them as one step above, like more advanced training, and so that they could do more advanced help with this, as well as help scan and screen different kinds of diverse audience pieces as well as literature reviews for potential outlets. And then develop channels as well with, let people know, maybe start a blog here in the school that starts to have respectable, maybe there's already a wonderful blog here, I'm not exactly sure, but something that's student oriented where people go, you know what, a lot of really great stuff can be found here. It's what's coming out of the school and we can read it easily and it's short and it really gives us some great information. And then to create this 315 online course. Part of the reason for that too is I really do believe in the face-to-face. I really do believe that that's very powerful instruction. But what has come out of this online is the fact that once that 307 online course was developed with 35 videos and all of the extra stuff that comes with having to have so much of everything written down, we took it to the rest of the 307 faculty and said, here you go. Use these videos in your class. Assign it for homework. Use these assignments. Use these new things. And I feel like what it's done is it's been a very synergistic experience to provide, lots of additional kinds of resources for what happens in class as well as what could happen in an online setting. All right. So I would see then the first year vision is basically it would take a little time to refine those assignments, the rubrics for them, to kind of develop the expectations and so forth. I think it would be valuable to test the different module orderings. Maybe if students do more poorly in a different order, then we don't use that particular track. And we figure out what works and what works well, and then stick with what we figure out. But it bears testing, I think, first time around. I think we begin an online version and we start to develop some online expert videos, inviting a lot of people. Let's say Sue Bergen who does our family focus. She does a fantastic job with a 2-page spread. Why could we not invite her to do some sort of a video, teach us how it's done? How does she go about it? What does she do? How does she put these together? What's been her, she's written on so many diverse topics. She's been great that way. Our students really ought to hear from her, and they really ought to know how these people who are great bloggers or how these people who publish a lot in, editors of the Ensign, etc., how they do it. And so I feel like that would be pretty crucial too, is starting to figure out who key players are in those various areas and see if we can't start getting some of their interviews and thoughts on video. And then create effective training for TAs would be a very important thing, because part of what we're going to need to do is if we have the TAs help. I know that in the 2 advanced writing courses I teach right now, I don't have TAs. There's not very much they can usually do. You're the diagnostician. I mean, yes, they can go through and check for APA errors, and they can go ahead and check for grammar problems, and they can make some suggestions, but when it comes right down to it, you need a little bit more expertise than you can do in a first semester sort of TA. But I think that we can at least elevate that by creating some really great TA training sessions, workshops, etc. And we were talking at breakfast actually with the search committee that I was there with about the possibility of why not expand that training to TAs that you use. Some things that could be done to help elevate the quality of what TAs can catch and what they're aware of and what they understand about different areas. And so the teaching then for the upcoming year would be 442, 4 sections, then 2, that's about 240 students. The second year vision, I would say, would be to add a couple more sections to possibly establish student editors and maybe a journal, to collaborate more with publication outlets, to put the online version into service, and to implement tracks to go 4 to 5. So 4 load, 5 across 5 sections, then you get more like a 664, and you get up to 380 students, then you're practically up to where we want to be as far as being able to service students. And obviously, as was mentioned in the document, other faculty members who want to take a semester to teach could also come in and help with that until we kind of ramp up for that kind of mode. So overall, I feel like the goal of this position is really to develop that high quality student writing. Quality is really at issue here, and what we would want to do is work with all of these questions until we could figure out what is the winning combination that really puts us at that place. I have seen that, and especially since you're talking about encouraging students who are in the younger end of the class. We actually went through that over in psychology, where when I first started teaching over there, it was not mandated when you had to take that. You just had to take it before you graduated. So what did we get? Last semester seniors. They were fabulous. They were easy to work with. They had their entire school career to practice writing, and they were really great at it, and we marched them along, and then they put into place the idea that it was part of their core, that it was one of those courses where they had to take it in an order, and it was, so now we were starting to get mostly sophomores, and that was a whole different experience because it takes a little longer to orient them towards what it is that your expectations are and give them a little bit more experience and a little bit more practice and et cetera. So, what will work with this audience, is as if they're coming in as sophomores, but obviously I think all of you are probably in the end kind of stakeholders in this whole proposition, because whatever we send to you, if we send to you a better trained set of writing students, then it's going to enhance your classes, and it's going to hopefully reduce the amount of comments you have to make in the margins of their papers. And so I feel like figuring out what the winning combination would be to maintain the high quality student writing, but ultimately to still have that idea that this message, we've got powerful messages that need to be taken to the world. We need to send them through even more channels if we possibly can. And so while I don't have an idea of how all of that would work out, I do feel like it's worth investigating to come to that point where that would be possible. So in closing, I would just say this is a powerful new opportunity, and it feels a little pioneering. How do we make this work? We've got some really good trailblazers, and we know and have seen how things work, but how can we manage what we really need to do for the vision of this school to be accomplished, and to raise the quality of our graduates, to prepare them better for the world, for graduate school, and et cetera. And as an organizer and as one who loves writing and loves the school of family life, I would hope that these kinds of things could be accomplished. Thank you.
We have time to open up for questions, so.
Yes, Sarah.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your ideas about the diverse writing audiences.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were having discussions with the folks in GE,
Mm-hmm.
they were really emphasizing that that's an important component of the advanced writing requirements to the university. And so that was part of the reason we were trying to include multiple audiences and trying to think about which audiences would be the ones that would best serve school and family life students.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just wondering, as you were looking over that and you were thinking about the scope as you described to us, if you had any other ideas about maybe which of those diverse audiences might be best served in an advanced writing class like this one, or
Yeah, and I appreciate that question, and I feel like as I thought more closely about it, that all of those are valuable audiences to write to. And I looked at the two textbooks that were described, and I taught out of the Baines and Baines over in psychology. I would give that textbook maybe a B+.
Okay.
I'm not in love with it. This is the other one that was talked about, joining the conversation. It does have a really good section on literature reviews, but it also does talk about those other diverse audiences, and so it's really a good textbook for this kind of thing. And that's why I was thinking maybe teach them all three, but have them produce two, is the idea, because maybe some people just their personalities don't work with op-eds, and that's a super stretch for them, but they love the idea of, doing a doctrinal piece for the enzyme or something like that. And so I would say, the way that you involve them in teams could be teamed around which selection they've made early on for which direction that they're going. I think we could still be learning about all of them and learn about the different areas quickly first, but then spend the rest of the time helping them work through whichever ones might be best suited to either their research topic, because I think there can be some transfer. But here's a quick example of a thesis statement from one of my students in the summer who took 307. Although the physiological and psychological causes of dreams and nightmares are unclear, the content of dreams and nightmares play a significant role in waking life and may be used to analyze and explain the effect of physical and/or sexual trauma, as well as evaluate interpersonal human interaction based on the manifest content and latent content of an individual's dream, since the subconscious mind functionally creates dreams and nightmares as a way to process information. This was one of our volleyball players, women volleyball players, in a summer term, creating a thesis statement. Give the formula, teach them how to do it, teach them how to research and think about it. So they come out with something like that, but the relationship between dreams and sexual trauma, are you going to write that into an op-ed? Are you going to write that into a doctrinal? So if we're really giving them free rein to follow their interests, it would seem like they would probably, their topic as well as their choice of diverse audience might lend itself to giving a little bit of choice and leeway without sacrificing the opportunity to teach all of those styles, audiences. Some thoughts.
So you have a unique perspective in that you've taught our students, psych students, business, education. What are some of the unique challenges our students have, and then how might you handle some of those?
That's an excellent question. My experience is that I love teaching SFL because there is a certain sort of enthusiasm and eagerness that is found here, a deep investment. Others are like, well, I'm really trying to do this for my profession, and these students, I feel like they're saying, I'm trying to do this for life. This is passing the test of life, as well as getting a job later on, and so I feel like there is that desire and that eagerness. I think that some of them may feel like they may not use a literature review later on, that they might not need that training, like they might be just checking a box. So I think one of the challenges is helping them recognize how what we're really doing is only a vehicle to critical thinking, to being able to be a cogent writer, to being able to, and look, here's all of the ways that, this is spread. I do, at the beginning of Psych 307, actually kind of a little bit of an autobiographical kind of PowerPoint. This is what writing means to me. I've written to school officials to help my child with an English class. I've written for this purpose, for that purpose. I've written business things for this. I've done, and here's how writing has opened doors for me. And so we're not just talking about a literature review. We're not just talking about a blog post. We're talking about your opportunity to contribute. And so I think building that larger vision to help them say, whether or not I'm going on to graduate school or what my future path may be, I need this. And I'm willing to invest in it as an important piece that I can, implement in lots of different areas of service in my life. So I would say vision, maybe.
Did you find that, I noticed in your instructional plan, you have time devoted to grammar.
Mm-hmm.
And as we watched your teaching presentation, also noticed you ran students through the grammar exercise. Now, for some, that might seem, well, that's a little elementary, and should they have learned that back in high school and things of that nature? So, given your experience with teaching and writing, what kinds of obstacles or writing obstacles are students bringing into the university situation that shows they really haven't learned some of those basic principles that kind of justifies your need for putting that up front?
Well, I've done kind of informal surveys of my students when we start out with grammar. A lot of times, actually, in 307, I've delivered it along the way. I call them grammar nuggets, and we do 4 of them, and I'm saying we're going to do this intense look at 4 different grammar principles in our 50-minute class period, and then a quiz next time, but then I intersperse it along the semester so they feel like it's more, helpful along the way, because now they're in the writing process. But usually at the beginning of that I say, so how long has it been since you took grammar in any kind of formal educational way? And a lot of them are like, well, 3rd grade, junior high, I rarely actually even hear high school as a time when they actually had dedicated time to learning grammar. I said, do any of you fall into this category where when you've written a paragraph you go, I don't think I have enough commas here. So maybe I'll throw a few in right here and here, and you have no idea. And they're all like, yes. I said, I can teach you the top 7 comma rules in like 25 minutes. They're just like, praise you, because it's like no more guessing about commas. I've got 90%. Granted, there's a lot of other picky rules down, but you can catch about 90% of the grammar of the comma errors in knowing those 7 or 8 comma rules, and so they usually are very grateful for that.
So can you just take 5
Can I
minutes
get a
right
copy of
now?
Exactly. And so, again, that's something I bring from the business school, because that's what we do. We have to teach those skills fast and efficiently and with good resources and et cetera, so that they get those. And so we've thought about it a long time, long and hard, and have put it together. And it's actually in our open textbook, so it's probably shareable here. We could just put in School of Family Life examples instead of business ones. Same thing for the grammar videos that you saw, that MCOM has developed here on campus with CTL. Could be re-edited, use the same figures and all of that, just put in new examples and have a new voiceover sort of thing, and we could put together really spiffy, here's how to get it quickly. And I've never seen a student who was not happy about what they finally understood. I finally get what parallelism is and how to use it. Thank goodness. I finally understand why this sentence is awkward. Thank goodness. And so I don't feel like we overdo it necessarily, but we do say, you need these skills. If you've already got them, great, then you'll just speed right through them. But I rarely find, even, maybe it's because we have a pretty hard test over there, but our average score on the grammar exam in the business school after a couple weeks of study is about 74, 77, something like that. So we're teaching them in depth, and I wouldn't, try to do something like that necessarily, but I think that there is a lot to be taught, and know how to teach those things, and I think we'd have an audience that would be grateful. Lauren.
You answered the questions that I had. I just wanted to say out loud, seeing you present for the first time today made me very grateful that I've never had to compete with you for employment head to head, because I think my kids would have starved.
Thank you. I will take that as a great compliment. I appreciate that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
So I'm curious about what percentage of students, or do you actually see students come through this class and then where they couldn't write well before, and then at the end they write well? Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen. It's hard to teach students to write.
Yeah, it is. It is, and that's why it requires a very refined approach you have to know what the subset of skills is. Also, you have to do a lot of encouraging and a lot of, I actually, if you don't mind, I have a testimonial from a student, so we can get it from the student's perspective, but I ask them oftentimes, because I usually do give a final for 307, but what I typically do is have it be a reflection final. And one of the questions that I've loved the most is and I tell them what the question is so they can prepare for it ahead of time, but in what ways has this experience been transformative is what I ask them. And I've gotten some really remarkable responses. Now, you're right, you can't take someone who just, you know, their writing is a real mess, but you can still get that up into, you know, a pretty decent, they've got it well formatted, they know what they're doing, their sentences are starting to sound a lot better, etc. But you take even a decent writer, and I found that they produce really quite high level, in the end, kind of things that are pretty highly synthesized. I would say that the synthesis level is probably at better than 85 or 90% by the time we get done with 307. But again, we've spent the entire semester working on these skills and going through drafts and stuff like that. He wrote this in the focus of from one student to another. So that's his focus, and I'm only taking, you know, the highlighted parts of it. But he says, I realized that a career in psychology and its associated major, which I love with all my heart, would require more writing than I thought was possible for me. Leading up to 307, I knew this class would make or break it for me, and it would require me to change my ways. As I entered my first day of class, I remember telling Professor Haupt that I believed I was a terrible writer and that I was expecting this to be miserable. I was partially right. The work that change requires was extremely miserable. I think that's an honest answer. If you're going to go there, it's a lot of hard work. One thing I learned very early on is that Professor Haupt will never abandon a student who is willing to work. Yes, it was hard, and yes, I wasn't perfect at it, but if you haven't already noticed, she cares tremendously for her students. She cares for you. And that turns out to be a really crucial element in all of this. You take a broad interest in what they're doing and let them know you believe that they can do it and they can do better. He says, surprisingly, the work to improve my writing started on my knees. After asking for his divine assistance, I began to write. As the paper began to form, I grew proud of my efforts. I loved what I was writing, so writing became a joyful experience. Now at the end of the term, I know I have something to offer. I know that my writing can contribute to the world, and I'm excited to see where this path takes me. And this wasn't my necessarily top student. This was a student who struggled with writing anxiety and had some issues that we had to work out across time, and really struggled for quite a while, and it was in a spring term, and so it really took a lot of work. But at the end of the day, and I think his paper was probably more like in the B plus-ish range and not the A range, but he'd had a transformative experience because his level had been taken up to a new level. So yeah, I think it is. I think with a well-directed curriculum, if people, again, if they're willing to work, then it works. If they want to just kind of slide through, or they're not really prepared, or they have a really extensive class load already, and then suddenly they get in there and there's this shock that's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do that? I'm going to have to read these 14 research articles thoroughly through? I've never done that before. It takes a long time to do that. I don't know. Then you have to move them past that early initial, this is why it's so crucial that you do that. And then if you can get them into that place, then they walk away from this class just going, wow, I did it. I'm so proud of this. I'm so excited. I can do stuff like this. And they learn that synthesizing is really the way to go, and that the whole Smith said, Jones said, Frank said, so I say, kind of format is not what we're looking for in professional settings.
Thank you.
Well, I think we're about at that time. Just remind those who have signed up for lunch, we'll do here. Dinner tonight at 6 for those who have signed up, and we have room for a couple more people. If anybody wanted to join us, you can let me know. But otherwise, if you'll join me in giving another round of applause.